What is crackling, everybody? Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Numberfire. That is right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and Numberfire.com, as we are breaking down the Week 14 NFL DFS main slate and breaking down our favorite plays each position and which games we're looking to stack on Sunday. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for Numberfire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for Numberfire.com. Brandon, happy Week 14 to you. How you doing today?
A bit fried. Breaking down this particular slate. I mean, it's 13 games, so about two more than we've been having for most of the season. And all the games are like decent. None of the games are great. So you really got to dig into all of them. And I mean, it's not a complaint. It's great to have all these options and not feel like you have to stack, two or three obvious games. But it's a lot of work to try to figure out where you actually want to be.
Yeah, we were talking before the show, and I opened up the Numberfire heat map to look at games sorted by total, because I was like, okay, are there games we can just cross off? And the game with the lowest total right now is a game I am inclined to stack. It's the Browns and the Bengals. Could go poorly, but it could go well. I don't think there is a game you can just cross off on this entire slate. Like, there are going to be plays that are at least interesting in every single game this week, which, kind of like you said, makes it difficult because it's hard to narrow your list down. There aren't a lot of terrible game environments where I can just ignore things, and it makes it difficult. So I agree that it's tough, but at least you're not going to be short on options. Minor positive?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier, like you said, and I don't know if it's a week where you just pick game stacks and hope you hit the right game stack, or if you don't go the game stack route and try to just play the best value plays. And I mean, I write up a game notes article every week on Numberfire. I list out core plays, guys I want in like cash games, secondary plays, and then tournament only plays. Usually I have like two or three games where there are no core plays, no secondary plays. It's just kind of some tournament stabs, but basically every game has like two core plays, two secondary plays, and then some tournament options. Like it's kind of it's just not a straightforward week, I guess.
The other part that makes it tough is I don't think there are any running backs I'm going to lock in. There's maybe one. It might be Leonard Fournette, but outside of that, I have slight concerns around McCaffrey given the coaching change. I have slight concerns around Derrick Henry because his usage is poop. Not really, but he's $9,100. Dalvin Cook, I don't know what they're going to do with him. Nick Chubb doesn't get passing down work. Aaron Jones doesn't get a lot of passing down work. Josh Jacobs might play half the snaps. Alvin Kamara's left tackle is banged up against one of the league's best defenses. Usually I can zero in on two or three running backs I know I want to make as my core. This week, as of Thursday morning, I'm not there yet, and it makes it tough.
Yeah, usually we spend up at running back in this house, and usually there are two at least guys who I'm just going to play these two. I don't know who the third is yet, but I don't know who they are yet.
Losing Miles Sanders to Monday Night Football is devastating to me in my process, because it was just, okay, cool, Miles Sanders every week. That was really easy. It's not as easy. There are value guys I like, but I can't feel great about them. I can like them, but I can't love them.
For me, this is the kind of week to remember that I don't know everything. I'm going to be wrong, and I need to embrace that and not necessarily lock in, players that I'm hesitant about.
Embrace the suck. We'll dive into this Week 14 main slate in just 1 second. But first, as a reminder, we are doing this every Monday and Thursday right here on the Numberfire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and on the FanDuel YouTube page. We record there at 9 a.m. on Monday and at 10 a.m. every Thursday. Subscribe on the FanDuel YouTube page to get those notifications as we go live, or subscribe to the Numberfire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get them after they are posted there. Just search for the Numberfire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. And while you're there, please leave a rating and review as well, because those do help us out a ton as we get into the stretch run of the season. Let's dive in now to the injuries for Week 14. It's not an injury, but it is noteworthy that the Panthers have fired their head coach Ron Rivera prior to their matchup with the Falcons. They've also got Greg Olsen in concussion protocol. He did not practice on Wednesday. On the other side of that game, the Falcons are expected to get both Julio Jones and Austin Hooper back this week. We'll discuss stacks of this game in the bookmaker section, because totally our second highest in the slate. Dalvin Cook was able to get in a limited practice on Wednesday, and he says that he's going to play on Sunday. Adam Thielen, though, did not practice Wednesday, which makes him seem closer to doubtful. We would obviously love Alexander Mattison if Dalvin Cook were to sit. So if you're listening to this later in the week and we find out that Dalvin Cook is not going to play, you should load up on Alexander Mattison at $5,100. But not knowing that right now, Brandon, how are you viewing this Vikings team?
I told you on Slack earlier, I'm going to get Dalvin Cook wrong no matter what. At $8,700, you need him to, be Dalvin Cook. Mm-hmm. If he's limited, and they're favored by 13, something like that. They don't need to run him into the ground. They shouldn't. But the matchup is so good, it's so enticing that he's like the one running back at the top who stands out to me. But I'm very concerned.
Like, if we had him without this shoulder/chest injury, he would be the lock at running back at 87. Yeah. The problem is that we have this, and while he's said since Monday that he's going to play, it's been more reserved on the part of Mike Zimmer. And I think the Adam Thielen thing kind of plays into that, because they brought him back before he was healthy, and now he's missed extended action since then. And I think that they are going to be wary with Cook as a result. The problem is that they need to win football games. I don't think they can just sit Dalvin Cook. I think that if they were to use him, we could see him be pedaled back a bit, and that's concerning. So I think that Dalvin Cook, unless he gets in like a full practice on Friday, like maybe Thursday too, he would not be a cash game play. I would go to him in tournaments if he plays, though, no matter what, because like he would objectively be a good play if he gets his regular workload. What about the passing game pieces here?
I mean, Stephon Diggs is not getting enough work. He's got a 20% target share since Thielen's been out pretty much since week 7. He's $8,000. Mm-hmm. That's a tall order. The tight ends are nice. Kyle Rudolph at 4,800, Irv Smith at 5,300. I don't mind them. BC Johnson's cheap, or BC Johnson. I don't know what he prefers, but I guess it's BC. 5,000. He ruined all my spreadsheets in draft season, so he deserves it.
I have on my target sheet, he is BC Johnson in the overall targets, and he's BC Johnson on the deep targets, and I should change it because it bothers me a lot, but I haven't gotten around to doing it yet.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess all things considered, don't really love the passing offense because they shouldn't have to throw the ball a lot.
I think that you mentioned Rudolph. I think that he is a quality play. He is due for negative touchdown regression, but like at $4,800. And this is weird because I hate Kyle Rudolph from like a yardage perspective, but he's been paying off basically on yardage alone at that salary recently. The games since Thielen got banged up, 58, 17, 23, 14, 67, and 50 receiving yards. And if you get that out of a guy at 48, he's going to pay off. He's cheaper than Irv Smith. I love Irv Smith. I think that Irv Smith is a very talented player, but I think that Rudolph is very, very in play at $4,800. You talk about Stephon Diggs' volume. I agree. Those concerns are big, and he's 8,000. I also like, we got Julio Jones beneath him. Mike Evans at 77 is fun. Julian Edelman is 76. I'm interested in Courtland Sutton. I love Devonta Parker and Jarvis Landry, DJ Moore. I don't think I'll get to Stephon Diggs, in all honesty. Like, it could burn me, but there's a lot of guys who could burn me on a 13-game slate, and I can't use everyone who could burn me.
Absolutely. That's a good thing to keep in mind, too.
Absolutely. So let's move on here to the Saints and 49ers. Saints could be getting a big piece back for their matchup here with the 49ers. Terran Armstead got in a limited practice Wednesday. I was searching Twitter feverishly throughout the afternoon, waiting for a practice update. He did get in a limited session after missing Thanksgiving due to an ankle injury. We'll talk more about that game in the section on Bookmaker Info. But let's talk about the backfield here for the 49ers first. Matt Breida, able to practice Wednesday, seems likely to return. We got Breida back. We got Raheem Mostert. We got Tevin Coleman. Brandon, can I ignore this backfield, please?
I think so, yeah.
Cool.
When they've all played a little bit, none of them gets even half the carries in the game. Like, that's been the case all year. It's probably going to be the case again this week.
Thank you very much. We'll talk about the passing game options there, which I don't mind in the section where we talk about the Saints. The Jaguars are going back to Gardner Minshew as their starter for the matchup with the Chargers. How does this influence your view of the passing offense for the Chargers? And I'm sorry I'm making you discuss this. I know it pains you.
Yeah, I mean, Minshew doesn't really throw the ball deep a ton.
His ADOT is a full yard lower than Nick Foles.
I mean, yeah, that adds up. Chris Conley takes the biggest hit. D.D. Westbrook gets a big boost. He's now the same price at $6,200 as DJ Chark, and we've been playing Chark for a long time, but he has double-digit FanDuel points in 2 of his past 7 games. So really, this kind of inverts the entire pecking order for me, I guess, to a degree. D.D. Westbrook's probably the number 1 for me now, then Chark, then Conley, who I wouldn't play.
I would agree. Westbrook being 62 is a pretty major turnoff, though, because that's not a great game. The Chargers just got back Adrian Phillips and Derwin James, which really does upgrade their passing offense. So Didi's fine, but it's hard for me to prioritize him when he's right by Zach Pascal, Tyler Boyd, and Robbie Anderson, all of whom, to me, at least, are very interesting. So I agree that Westbrook's highest, but of the pass catchers, but I think Leonard Fournette's the only guy I'm really looking to get in for that team. Marlon Mack returned to practice on Wednesday, seems ready to return from his hand injury, but T.Y. Hilton sat out practice. He will likely miss another game. So which pieces on the Colts interest you, assuming Mack is back and Hilton continues to sit as they face the Buccaneers?
I mean, Jack Doyle at $6,300 is pretty pricey. I don't love that. He'd be the guy I'm most interested in, I think, overall, because he's a tight end. Zach Pascal at $6,100 makes sense, but I don't really think I'll play anybody else. I wouldn't even touch Marlon Mack. The Bucs rush defense is too good.
I like Pascal more than Doyle because he's cheaper. I think that Doyle's a bit overpriced. Like, I don't think it's bad in this matchup.
He's overpriced,
yeah, he's in play, but I think he's overpriced. Whereas Pascal, I think, is appropriate. I was tweeting about Pascal last week, and someone said he sucks. He went for 109 yards. He doesn't suck. I think that means people are not inclined to use him, which is encouraging because this matchup could inflate ownership. But I think that Pascal at 61, like, I'm not saying I'm going to target him in cash games, but like, he's not off the map there. And I think he's a really good tournament play. I had a lot of him last week, and it worked out well. But I think that he is also in play for this week. I think that you're fine to rank Doyle higher. I don't mind that. I just personally would go with Pascal a bit higher.
Pascal's got the better price for sure, all things considered. But I mean, they're really the only two. I'll stack this game with those two, and then my boy Mike Evans. But Chris Godwin, obviously, I'll feel obligated to play him. But
yeah, I was looking at the fanshare tags. Jack Doyle's second among all players. Zach Pascal's 27th. So I like that. What about Paris Campbell? He returned to a full practice on Wednesday, and Paris Campbell is $4,800 in the games that he has started that T.Y. Hilton has missed. He had 8 targets in one and 5 targets in the other. That 5-target game was against the Steelers. So I don't really put a lot of stock into that. He hasn't shown a lot of yardage juice because they're kind of using the same way Ohio State did, which is annoying. But would you consider him at $4,800?
In game stacks, just to like get some differentiation, sure.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, on a 13-game slate, it doesn't really move the needle.
Yeah, I think I have him in the back of my mind. And I rank him above Marcus Johnson and your boy, Ashton Doolin, who I picked up in a dynasty league this week because of you. But
nice.
I think that he's second behind, or he's third behind Pascal and Doyle, but it's a little thin. I'm not going to say I'm writing him off, though.
Okay. I mean, I can't blame you for having some interest.
Let's move here to the Chiefs, where, shocker, their backfield is still a mess. Both Damian and Darrell Williams missed practice on Wednesday. There was optimism Tuesday that Damian could go, but Darrell seems on the wrong side of questionable. We'll talk about the passing game in the trend section, but let's talk about the backfield here. Is there a scenario in which you see yourself targeting this backfield?
I mean, it's not a good matchup against the Patriots. Lesean McCoy, I guess, would be the first place I'd look at $6,100. He would have the claim to starting and seeing the most work safely, but they've said that they don't want to get him overworked. I know that they need to win this game, but
Yeah.
I don't think giving Lesean McCoy 20 touches is how they're going to win the game. So I guess maybe, if anything, it's Darwin Thompson would be more intriguing at $5,200. I know he didn't get much work until the end of the game, but there should be opportunity. And there, again, do you anticipate them playing Lesean McCoy 3/4, just giving him every touch?
Not every touch, but 60 to 70%. If Darrell Williams and Damian Williams sit,
Right.
If one of them plays, LeSean McCoy is so dusty.
Yeah.
They so desperately don't want to use this dude. And I think Andy Reid saying it's load management is him backing up his guy, because they were on the road against Tennessee in a game where if they won, they'd have a good route towards a first-round bye, and he was inactive. Then last week, Darrell Williams was out carrying LeSean McCoy before Darrell Williams got hurt. They don't like LeSean McCoy. I don't think it's load management. I think they hate him.
So
but I think they hate Darwin Thompson more.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't know how you go from playing behind Darrell Williams to being a full-on
if everyone else is hurt, Darwin Thompson was playing behind all those dudes. Didn't play till they were up 31-3.
They signed Spencer Ware, right?
Yeah.
I didn't dream that. Okay.
No, that happened. Yeah, it sounds like a yearly Chiefs ritual, is re-signing Spencer Ware. I don't know. I think that if everyone were to sit, I would go with Shady at 61, because they did use their back slot in the passing game last year against the Patriots. Kareem Hunt got a lot of work in the regular season, and then Damian got a lot of work in the playoffs. So if Damian plays, I would include him in game stacks at 6,000. If he gets in a full practice Friday, removed from the injury report, sweet, let's ride. Not a lot of them, but I would definitely get some. And if both Damian and Darrell are out, then I would use LeSean McCoy. So there are two paths to me using a Chiefs running back, but neither of them would be a core fixture for me, if that makes sense.
I'm with you.
Condolences, Brandon, but the Dolphins did put your boy Kalen Ballage in injured reserve. If Ian Poulter's my guy, Kalen Ballage is yours. I'm just doing this. They did sign Zach Zenner to the active roster. They're facing the Jets this week, and the Jets could be without Jamal Adams as he deals with an ankle injury. So, any interest in Patrick Laird at $5,500?
I think there's attrition-based, low-end value. I know Patrick Laird is a huge DFS Twitter superstar. Yeah. He can get receiving work, which is good for a value back. But the Jets still, they're tough against the run. They're tough, on backside of the backfield. I don't really anticipate playing too much Patrick Laird.
Yeah, I think the question that I'm asking is how many receiving yards would he need to pay off? Because he's not going to get a lot rushing against this behind that offensive line against this defense. I think he would need 70 receiving yards and a touchdown, and I don't think many backs have that ability. He had 43 last week, so it's not like he's a good back in the passing game, but I don't think that it's really a situation we need to go at.
I don't like playing any running back who I don't feel confident can get 15 FanDuel points, and I think that's kind of his ceiling.
I think that's fair. James Conner got in a limited session on Wednesday, indicating he may be nearing a return. Meanwhile, Juju Smith-Schuster said Wednesday he still can't make cuts, which seems suboptimal, so pretty fair to assume he's out this week. How are you handling the Steelers in a delectable matchup with the Cardinals?
Just game stack only options. That's all. I'm not going to go out of my way to target anyone. It would be James Washington, but he's $6,700.
Yeah, man.
That's insane. I guess Deontay Johnson is a decent value if you're stacking that game at $5,100, but I don't love that. I mean, Benny Snell's $6,100, so if Connor's out,
yeah. Well,
Snell
he played
makes sense.
37% of the snaps last week, though.
16 carries, 11 red zone carries the past two games.
You're right. But I still it's not someone I really want to use. And as far as the passing game goes, we talk a lot about average depth of target as being a thing to consider for DFS, because I was talking to Bob Stoll, who is a big betting guy, and he factors air yards into his betting model because, whoops, I just downloaded some spreadsheets from fantasyadhd.com meant to click on something else. But I was talking to Bob Stoll, and he said that he factors air yards into his betting model because it increases the offense's overall efficiency. And Duck Hodges averaged at the target at 7.5. It was 4.8 entering last week. So we're working with small samples here, but I don't have a lot of faith this dude's going to throw deep. And that really hurts the upside of the entire offense. So I don't want to go James Washington. Vance McDonald is crazy expensive, 58. Like, I could pay $400 more and get to Darren Waller. Happily would take that. Like, I don't know. I agree with you. It's like game stacks only, but I'm not even sure I want to do game stacks at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so Hodges, you mentioned he had a very low ADOT entering the week. Then it's up higher. It's because he did throw deep 7 times last week.
On 21 attempts, yeah.
I mean, he's 31st in downfield attempt rate among like 49 qualified quarterbacks. So he's not great, but it's not like he's Derek Carr. So I think that there are some
he's
shots.
He's not Drew Brees.
Yeah. The issue, again, is just James Washington, $6,700. I'm not paying that very often.
Like, it was different last week when it was the Rams, who I thought were objectively overpriced too, but I still used them because I knew that there was a path to them throwing it deep and throwing efficiently. I don't know if that's really the case with the Steelers, so I'm very low on them.
Now, one thing you can do is say, if you're stacking this game, Cristian Kirk's $5,900. So if you say I play James Washington and Cristian Kirk, you could flip those prices in your head and feel more like comfortable doing that.
I'd agree. I also think Kenyon Drake is pretty attractive at 61. So like, there are guys in this game I like, but they're not necessarily the Steelers side. We've got another Number Fire FanDuel free play lined up for this week exclusively for FanDuel Podcast Network listeners. The top 3 lit finishers all get free Number Fire premium subscriptions. The top 5 spots get cash. To submit your lineup and get entered, this week's URL is FanDuel.com/league/JJ for our colleague JJ Zach Reason. That is FanDuel.com/league/JJ. Just the letter J twice to enter. Get your shot at free Number Fire premium and cash. Again, FanDuel.com/league/JJ. Let's move now to our trends discussion for week number 14. Our first trends are both discussing this Chiefs-Patriots game. So I think it's like the most interesting real-world football game on the slate, and that lends itself to good stuff for fantasy because close games are competitive. They get volume deep into the fourth quarter. It's also very fast, so I like this game from that perspective, but it's hard to dissect whom we should use. So I'm going to let you talk about the Patriots because I don't want to talk about them, and then I'll talk about the Chiefs, and we'll go from there. So what do you see with the Patriots here recently?
Yeah, their offense overall in this season has not been great. It's something we've talked about. It's not a slight on just Tom Brady, but the facts are that they rank 18th in adjusted passing offense according to Number Fire's, schedule adjusted, opponent adjusted metrics. The Chiefs are 4th defensively. Now they are just 19th in adjusted pressure rate, so that kind of helps. But in 4 matchups with top 12 opponents, Tom Brady's averaged 259 yards, 1.5 passing touchdowns with above average efficiency in that split. Surprisingly, if you make that just 2 matchups with top 5 pass defenses, he's averaged 313 yards and 2 passing touchdowns for 0.15 passing net expected points per dropback. The NFL average on the full season against all opponents is 0.08. The in-split average against top 5 opponents is negative 0.13. So he's been very good in those 2 games, so it's just kind of whichever split you like to look at here. Now, we can pretty much always bank on Julian Edelman. After that, it's been a little tough, and that's kind of what I want to dig into. They've had just a revolving door at wide receiver pretty much, but last week it was Edelman, Phillip Dorsett, and Jacoby Meyers. Edelman played 92% of the snaps, Dorsett was at 71%, and Meyers was at 70%. By comparison, N'Keal Harry played 25% of the snaps, and Mohamed Sanu was at 22%. The routes, according to Pro Football Focus, pretty much in line with the snap rates there. The targets last week, 12 for Julian Edelman, 11 for James White, 7 for Meyers, 6 for Dorsett, and still 5 for Sanu. But, I mean, Edelman's the number 1 here, but I really do think that it would be Dorsett followed by Meyers. And they're affordable at $5,400 and $5,100 respectively, and that is always a nice thought to have guys who will be on on the field in games that are close. In the backfield, it was James White who dominated last week at 78% of the snaps in negative script. The Chiefs, though, 32nd in rushing success rate allowed to running backs, 30th in overall adjusted rushing defense. So the game plan could be to play keep away and just run the ball with Sony Michel. So I like the passing offense. I think that they can come through in this matchup. But, I mean, the Patriots are never easy to trust. They're still a lure in trying to figure them out this week. So how are you handling them?
Yeah, I agree that they're very intriguing. I think that Edelman, like I listed like 15 different high salaried receivers I like. But if I'm there in a cash game, I think that Edelman's my favorite. Like over Parker, over Landry, over all those guys. Over Mike Evans.
Yeah, I have a note like in my head that everyone above Julian Edelman, outside of potentially Mike Evans, has more concerns than Julian Edelman this week.
Right.
So I think he's like kind of my number
He's in
one.
a game between the teams ranked 1st and 5th in situation neutral pace, and he has double-digit targets in 7 straight games. His floor is amazing. And I think that he has a very easy path to a good ceiling too. So I like Edelman at 76 a lot. James White is really hard for me to diagnose because last week he outcarried Sony Michel, and like you said, he played a ton of snaps. It seemed like the script was part of that because in the first half, Michel had 7 carries compared to 4 for White. If you look through the first 3 quarters, it was 10 carries for Michel and 9 for White. If we're going to get like 9-ish carries for James White in addition to his target load, I think that he is intriguing at 6,000. And like we always talk about opportunity cost. But if he's going to get those carries, the opportunity cost goes lower because it increases his touchdown equity. So, there are running backs near 6,000 I like, but I think that he's still like a pretty decent option. I'm more into James White now than I've been into him all year long. And that's I know it's very point chasey to say that after he's coming off a 33 or 34 point game, but I think that he's more attractive to me than he's been all season long. And I think that I don't want to overcomplicate things and chase the receivers too much when I know I can just go to Edelman or go to James White. If I had to go elsewhere, I think that Jacoby Meyers would probably be my favorite guy. 7 targets last week. He had a deep target. He had, I think, 2 red zone targets too. He's $5,100. So I like that quite a bit. So I think to me, if I'm ranking them, it's Edelman, White, Meyers, but there is a massive gap between Edelman and White and then between White and the rest. How would you assess that?
I like Philip Dorsett. He had 124 air yards last week on his 6 targets, 2 red zone targets, 1 deep target. I would feel confident that he's kind of in play for some deep shots in this game if they take them. It would be probably most likely to Dorsett. So at $5,400, I like Dorsett. I like Meyers, but I would rank them Edelman. You're more confident that James White retains his role?
I wouldn't say confident. That's why I said there was a tier between him and Edelman.
More confident than I am.
Okay.
It sounds like.
Sure.
But I guess I'd put him second. I would put Dorsett over Meyers, though.
Yeah, I think White's not a cash game play, but he's a tournament play because if he gets that rushing game volume again, he'd be really good. And especially with their center being out, I think that does help the odds that they go heavy James White as opposed to Michel. I don't really want to use Michel at 66. I know there is a path to which they just ride him, but he's been bad, and they've been bad as a rushing team this year with no Devlin and now no Ted Karras. So I'm really okay with not going there and having it burn me. If it burns me, it burns me. What about you with Michel?
In game stacks, if I assume that things go that way,
sure,
but outside of that, I wouldn't touch him.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe I'll have some, but I really don't. I don't need to. If I don't get there, it's fine. I'm not gonna.
His ceiling's really not. It's really not gonna kill you.
That's the concern for me, and I think his floor is pretty bad too at this point. Let's talk about the other side of that game and talk about the Patriots defense, because we get a healthy Chiefs offense facing this elite Patriots defense. And the pass defense is good. We should not dispute that. They're the second-ranked pass defense once you adjust for schedule, but they haven't been bulletproof this year when facing good teams. And I think that's very noteworthy. They played 12 total games this year, and the Patriots have faced just 4 teams ranked in the top half of the league in schedule-adjusted passing offense. And the results in those have been a bit mixed. And the 2 good games for the Patriots against good offenses have both been in Foxborough, which is where this one is. One was against the Browns, who are the 15th ranked schedule-adjusted passing offense. I know it's a surprise, but they've had a rough schedule. They're better than the Patriots this year. Weird. The other one's against the Cowboys in that really wonky weather game. This one is in Foxborough, so I think that's very noteworthy. The other two games, though, did make the Pats look vulnerable. That was Lamar Jackson and Shawn Watson. They put up 37 and 28 points respectively, and they both averaged more than 0.50 passing net expected points per dropback, which is a really big number. If you combine all four games together, the Patriots have allowed 0.10 passing net expected points per dropback against these teams with a 47.9% success rate. So they basically been about league average, which means we absolutely need to downgrade the Chiefs' passing offense as they go to Foxborough because their baseline is much better than league average. But I don't think we need to avoid them given what the Ravens and the Texans have done, even if those games were on the road for the Patriots. We know the Chiefs want to get the ball to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, but the Patriots know that too, and they will try to counter those guys. If you look at the playoff game last year, Hill had 3 targets and Kelce had 5. Damian Williams and Sammy Watkins both had 8. And to me, that says that Watkins is interesting at 56. He is cheap. He may see some Stephon Gilmore here, I would assume, based on the way that they played things last year. Gilmore actually covered Watkins quite a bit. So it's a risk, but he's in play, and I hate saying that. I will still have shares of Hill and Kelce, though, because if you combine their regular season game and their playoff game, Hill did lead in targets, and he went nuts in their regular season game, which was in Foxborough. They changed up the coverage in the second game, but it's hard to completely blank those guys, even when putting an emphasis on shutting them down. So none of these guys are cash game viable, but I think that all 3 of Hill, Kelce, and Watkins are in play for game stacks. Finally, Mahomes is in play, obviously, at $8,400 despite the matchup. Will likely get him throwing all game, which is valuable for someone as good as him. He's very much for tournaments only, but I do want him there. So I feel good enough about the Chiefs offense to go at them, even against a really tough defense. Do you feel that way too? And if so, what's your favorite route for doing so?
Definitely not the running backs. So probably Mahomes and Kelce. What?
No, yeah.
No.
Oh, wait, so you rate Kelce above Hill?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, I know Hill has the game breaking. I was trying to look up his area.
Interesting is what I always say when I disagree with you. Just
I know.
Go
ahead.
You know.
Go ahead. Tell me.
So if you combine, I have this up my other computer, so excuse me while I look away from you. But if you combine the 2 games last year between the regular season and the playoffs, as I scroll, this piece is too long. Tyreek Hill had 23% of the overall targets and 39% of the deep targets. Kelce had 22% of the overall targets, not bad, but 6% of the deep targets. And like they could put, in theory, Stephon Gilmore on Kelce. They did that at the end of that playoff game last year. I don't think that's out of the range of outcomes. So if I'm going at 1, I want the guy with the more unique skill set, and that's Tyreek Hill.
I mean, I'm going to play both of them, so it's
okay.
I hate playing tight ends, so I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I love Devonta Adams, so I think that's also factoring in, although he's got his own set of concerns, but you can't go wrong with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, or Patrick Mahomes, really, so long as you're smart about it and you're not loading up. Like, you're not trying to play Tyreek Hill in a cash game.
Yeah.
Because the floor is still low if New England can successfully limit him. But, I mean, I like this offense a lot.
Yeah.
Mahomes has only played 1 top 12 pass defense all year, which is a little concerning, but he did shred the Ravens.
Well, he shredded the Jaguars, too, back when they still had Jalen Ramsey. And I think that's impactful.
Yep.
Kelce or George Kittle?
Kelce.
I go Kittle. I like that game, I think, more than the bookmakers do. So I think I like it a decent amount. And I think I'll go Kittle. So I think they're very close, and I like both, but I prefer Kittle. So it's a fun game. Where does this rank for you from a stacking perspective? Like, do you feel good enough about it to like go pretty hard at it? Because I do. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd go. I don't know if I could say that I'd go harder at this one than everything else. The betting action's been on the under. So I mean,
I would disagree with that, but that's interesting.
I mean, they're both top 8 in my adjusted pace numbers. I mean, we know the pass defenses are good. It's really just a matter of what the Patriots do. So there's concerns. I don't know if I'd put it number 1.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what my favorite stack would be, though.
I think that the reason you could justify not putting it one is because we have other good matchups in the slate, like the Jets against the Dolphins. So let's move to that with our second trend. And I'm not even joking that much. Like, it is kind of a really fun game for DFS. So you're going to talk about the Jets, and then we can talk about this game more broadly. You're specifically focusing on Le'Veon Bell here at 73. What do you see with him in this Jets offense?
Yeah, I'm looking at his fantasy production, which is not really something that we fixate, and it's kind of on the nose, but I think it matters for Le'Veon Bell because he's been such a peculiar case this year. He's $7,300 again, which I think he's been every week between that and 7,000, but facing Miami, who's 25th in adjusted rush defense, they're 29th in rushing success rate allowed to running backs. They are 28th in target success rate allowed to running backs. They are 27th in yards before contact allowed to running backs. So it's green across the board here for Le'Veon Bell in terms of his matchup. But he's averaged 12.6 FanDuel points per game. He has at least double-digit FanDuel points in 8 of 12 games, though. But he's maxed out at 20.2 FanDuel points. He's just once gotten over 16.2. He has 3 100-yard games, and none of his 4 touchdowns came in those games. So he could have had better games, but I mean, it just has not been there. There's a decent floor for sure, especially in the soft matchup, but the ceiling has not been there. And that's kind of making it hard to play Le'Veon Bell, or at least prioritize him in that cluster of running backs this week. Since week 6, when Darnold came back, the Jets are 25th in net expected points per play. They are outside the top 20 in rushing and passing efficiency. But I mean, this is about as good as a matchup can get. Darnold actually played 6 straight games against pass defenses outside the top 20, which Miami definitely is, but just 259 yards, 1.7 touchdowns. So it's not terrible. It's not great. It's not like he's been lighting it up. So, I mean, you mentioned it. This game has appeal. We're going to want some exposure probably, but are we getting suckered back in by Le'Veon Bell to give us like 13 FanDuel points, or are you okay with it? What are your thoughts here on Le'Veon Bell, but also the Jets in general?
Yeah, I will go at Le'Veon Bell because of his passing down work. Like if you look ever since he had that meeting with Adam Gase, which was before the first Miami game, he is averaging 15 carries and 5 targets per game. His health has been better. And that, like, he didn't get a lot of work last week, but the week before that against the Raiders, like, he was involved on 11 of their first 19 plays, including getting a deep target. Like, he was lined up as a receiver, got a deep target. Like, their usage of him has not been as bad as I think it's being billed to be. And this Jets offense is very volatile. So they're going to have bad days, but I think that they're less volatile when they're at home. Outside of that New England game, which was bad, that was at home. Since Darnold returned, they had that Dallas game at home. They won that 24-22. They faced the Giants, won 34-27. They faced Oakland, won 34-3. They might be a team that just has some volatile home road splits that we're seeing develop here, because Darnold, he played well against Cincinnati, but disappointed from a fantasy perspective. I needed the same thing against Miami. He had a terrible pick, but he was fine outside of that. And I think we could just see a team with budding bad home road splits. So, Le'Veon's not going to bust off a long run. He did last week, but a callback for holding. They cheated, so it doesn't count. I'm not going to factor that in. But he's not going to bust off a long run. But he could have a 2-touchdown day, and he could have 100 yards from scrimmage. If he does that 73, that's impactful. So I think that he is not a cash game play because I can get to Leonard Fournette so easily at 75. But I'm still going to use Le'Veon Bell in tournaments for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who the 3 cash game running backs are because, again,
right,
should play 3. I'm not saying
I think that Fournette's locked in.
Yes.
And I'm just deciding the other 2.
Yes. There's actually Melvin Gordon at the same price, who's definitely, look, neither Le'Veon Bell nor Melvin Gordon are completely flawless, but if you're that worried about Le'Veon, you can go right with Melvin Gordon, but what I'm trying to get at is that Le'Veon might be in my cash game lineups.
Yeah, I don't think that's the worst thing if it happens. Would you prefer Melvin or Le'Veon, though?
I think Le'Veon.
Okay. I might go Melvin there, but it's very close. I don't think it's bad. If you want to with Le'Veon, I don't think it's a terrible thing. I've just had it in my cash game roster a lot of times this year, and it's gone well twice. So
Melvin?
Le'Veon.
Oh, yeah.
Melvin's like been off the main slate for like 6 months.
Yeah,
So
I just got confused as all.
No, but I think that Melvin's fine. Let's talk here about the Browns because they're facing the Bengals. And I kind of think this game has some shootout appeal because it's the Browns with no Myles Garrett, no Morgan Burnett, facing Andy Dalton, and the Bengals with John Ross back in the fold. They got Cordy Glenn back 2 weeks ago. They got Dalton back last week. They get John Ross back this week. The Bengals aren't good, but they're less actively bad than they were before. So I think they're going to score, and I think the Browns should too. The Browns are the 15th ranked schedule-adjusted passing offense, and they're facing the league's 29th ranked pass defense. So I really don't mind stacking this one up, even though the total is the lowest on the slate. We have to look at the Browns' usage to decide the best route for doing so. The most relevant sample here is since Kareem Hunt debuted 4 games ago, and he's getting work as both a rusher and a receiver, which alters the outlook for everyone here. In that 4-game sample, Jarvis Landry leads in overall targets, deep targets, and red zone targets. He has averaged 91 receiving yards per game in that split, so the production has been there too. He is $7,200, and I think that Landry is the best play for cash games, and he is the top target here straight up. I like Jarvis Landry a lot. Odell Beckham's still in play, though, at $6,800. He has 27% of the team's targets, 37% of the deep targets in this time. It's not as much as Landry, and the production has been lower, but the volume for this salary in a matchup this good is still awesome. Between the two, I'm actually kind of okay letting popularity dictate where I go for tournaments. If people go to Beckham because he's cheaper and he has a flashier name, then I'll happily pay up for Jarvis Landry. But if the public is fed up with Beckham and they decide to go Landry instead, Beckham's usage is good enough for me to just pivot down and go to him instead. So I'm okay playing this one based on the ownership. As far as the running backs go, Nick Chubb's role has definitely taken a hit with Kareem Hunt back, but it's not enough for me to be off of him. In the 4 games with Hunt back, Chubb is averaging 26 adjusted opportunities per game. That is down from 27.3 before Hunt's debut, and a lot of that is because he's gotten a ton of rushing volume in the games that they've won, and they're 8.5 point or 7.5 point favorites now here. The salary for Chubb is $7,900. That reflects, I think, the imperfection in his profile, especially in this spot. I am very okay with him, but I do again prefer guys like Leonard Fournette in cash games. I think that if I'm ranking the guys in this Browns team straight up this week, it's Landry 1, Chubb 2, and then Beckham 3. But I like all of them quite a bit, and I'm willing to pivot if any of those guys are shaping up to be super popular. So, Brandon, what is your read on this Browns offense for week number 14?
Pretty similar. I mean, I like this team. I don't have any guys as like core plays because I don't know if it'll be Landry or Beckham. I mean, Landry's had the better usage. I was trying to get the tags on these guys from FanShare.
I have it up.
Okay.
So you can talk about them, and I'll pull that.
Okay.
Odell is 20th in tags. Jarvis is not on the first page, so I guess it's Jarvis
63rd.
week.
63rd.
Yeah, it's a Jarvis week.
I mean, he's pricier on FanDuel, so that should help. Lead into the idea that he will be a little bit less popular. But I would probably put them Landry, Beckham, Chubb. I mean, okay. I don't know.
Chubb, no, I think that's fair because Chubb's passing game work has been not great. That's fair.
I mean, there's action. 74% of the bets and the money have been on the over, but only 23% of the bets have come in on Cleveland, according to OddsFire. So even though there are bets on Cincinnati, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be negative game script because Cleveland's favored by 7.5. So the game script game environment should still be good for Nick Chubb. So I'm enticed by him. Where are all the running backs with like no concerns? They just don't exist.
They got Thanos, man. They're gone.
Yeah, I guess.
So there's action on the Bengals. There's some money on the over. Andy Dalton, 7,000, baby. Let's go. Well, you nodded. I expected you to get really mad at me.
Dude, I play so many bad quarterbacks. I'll play Andy Dalton. I mean, the thing is, like, it's not a significant savings from some passers with much better usage or expectations. But, I mean, I love Tyler Boyd. John Ross coming back is going to help the offense. So I wouldn't write off Andy Dalton if you're stacking up games.
And I think that John Ross coming back helps Joe Mixon too, especially with Cordy Glenn back, because like it just makes the team more efficient, which increases touchdown expectation. Mixon in that first game with Dalton back had 19 carries and 4 targets. That worked for a guy who's 67. So I think this game is really easy to stack, and I think that I think the total here is like ridiculous. Personally, I'm talking about uncovering the spread later today is like my favorite bet of the week is the over on this game. So like, if you want to get weird, stack a game with a low total, and I think this is the best game for that. It's worth noting the wind is high. It's currently at 16 miles per hour, but that Dolphins game for the Browns also had high wind, and it didn't matter. So it could be the construction of the stadium. I was talking with Chris Allen about this. Chris Allen, FFWX, I think is his Twitter handle. Just search for Chris Allen. Anyway, he does great weather work. And he was talking about how he was watching a Browns game because he does a lot of weather stuff. And the flags on the field goal post were not moving despite there being wind. So I am more okay with Browns players in wind than a lot of people. And that translates to the Bengals too.
I mean, that's a really good observation. Chris does.
Yeah, I appreciate Chris a lot.
He does weather work for us at Number Fire, so definitely check him out.
All right, let's move on to your third trend and talk about a game that I have no read on. That is the Cardinals and the Steelers. You were talking about the Cardinals side of things here because they're facing a really tough defense, but there could still be some plays here. So go through that one, and then we can talk about this game in general.
Yeah, I'm specifically looking at Kyler Murray against like good pass defenses because look, it's a 13-game slate. We don't have to play anybody in particular. Like you can fade anybody. There are enough options to do that, but the Steelers-Cardinals game is, I don't think it's great, but I can see reasons for it to end up being one of the better game stacks because, the Cardinals defense isn't good. They're up tempo, but there's no weather concerns because of the retractable roof, so that definitely helps out. But this could be a week where everyone's just off the Cardinals. Sounds like you're willing to consider that option. But look, Kyler Murray's faced a really tough schedule. He's got a top 3 pass defense this week in the Steelers, but 8 of his 12 games have been against top half pass defenses this year. 6 of them have been against top 12 pass defenses. In those games, he's averaged 229 passing yards and 1 touchdown per game. So it's not great, but his passing efficiency has been pretty much exactly the league average against top 12 opponents. So it doesn't mean that he's been dominating, but it's not like he's been collapsing in these tough matchups. And in these games, he's averaged 5 rushing attempts and 35.7 rushing yards, which is about 4 FanDuel points worth. That's almost like a free passing touchdown here. So he's an intriguing option from an upside standpoint because I do think that people will just not play him because they don't have to. And his main stacking partner is very cheap in Cristian Kirk at $5,900. Since Kenyon Drake arrived on the team, Kirk has a 23.5% target share. It's first on the team. Larry Fitzgerald's second at 18%. Drake's at 17%. Farrah Cooper's down at 13%. But, I mean, going back to Kirk quickly, he's got 38% of the downfield targets. He's getting a lot of good usage. I know he got erased by Jalen Ramsey last week, but $5,900 is very enticing if everyone's off of him because he did not show up last week. Now, I don't know who else you go with because it's been Cooper getting the other downfield looks at 24%, Fitzgerald and Andy Isabella are at 14% in that span. So, I mean, I still think Kirk's a bounce-back candidate. And then in this backfield, it could be a full-on mess with David Johnson and Chase Edmonds in the mix with Kenyon Drake, but Drake's played 84%, 64%, 88%, and 80% of the snaps in his 4 games with the team. And really, if you project him for the workload he's been getting at his salary, he's like a top 5 running back play. I'm not saying that we can project that with confidence, but despite the matchup, I still think that there are 3 viable Cardinals here. That's not terrible. So what are your thoughts on this game overall, but the Arizona offense, I guess, in particular?
Yeah, I respect the Steelers defense a lot. If you look at them since the Minka Fitzpatrick trade, they've been like stupid good. But like top receivers who have gotten volume have still been fine against them. Like Jarvis Landry was okay last week. We had Robert Woods get 95 yards against them. Zach Pascal went for 76 and a touchdown, despite having Brian Hoyer as his quarterback for most of that game. Mike Williams was fine. So, like, there are paths to good games. I think that's enough to justify using going with Cristian Kirk at 59. I used him last week, like in spring, more than sprinkles, more than I should have, because I knew that Ramsey would probably shadow him, but I thought the pace in that game would be high enough to overcome that. And that's not as much of a plus this week, but I think there's still enough there for Kirk at 59. I think I prefer Kenyon Drake, though. I think that the way you phrased that was correct, where you said if we project him for the workload he's been getting, he's a top 5 per dollar play. And I think that you're wording it that way because you know that it's not a lock that he gets that. And I think that's the right way to view this thing. But seeing him get that last week with Johnson and Edmonds active, it made me feel a lot better about it. So I think that like the way you can play this is figure out in your head the odds that Drake holds that role. If it's like 70%, you're not going to use 70% Kenyon Drake because it's still a very tough defense. But you can use quite a bit of Kenyon Drake if you assume that because he gets so much work in the passing game. So I am into Kenyon Drake quite a bit. I will not go there in cash games because I know that there is a possibility that because he wasn't effective last week, they could go back to David Johnson. They could mix in Chase Edmonds. But I do want to try to have more of him than the field does in tournaments.
Yeah, I'll probably be there too. I actually wasn't in on him that much until I really just thought, because you have to assume in certain games. And if you assume Drake's getting that work this week, then even in the matchup, you can still pay off that low salary. So I don't know exactly where I am with him. I'm more intrigued by Cristian Kirk.
Okay.
But he's got a tough matchup again. I think it's just more, we've seen Kyler Murray do it in tough matchups, and I'm starting to buy in that can just kind of get it done. So I just think that there's a little bit more juice in this game than it might seem.
I think there's juice on this side, right? On this side of the game. The other side, again, is really expensive, and it's really a turnoff, but I like this side.
Again, though, I mean, if you're stacking this game, you're going to stack Cristian Kirk and James Washington. So
right. Like, that's helpful. Like, you know how to bring it back with the Steelers. And if it blows up, it'll be with James Washington doing well. So I think that's helpful. But I mean, standalone, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you combine them, they're probably $6,400 each. You would consider that. You'd be much more open to it.
I think that's true.
Whatever that works out to be.
Right.
I can't
exactly. Let's finish up the trend discussion here with the Raiders versus the Titans, because that has the third highest total on the board. It's for the Raiders versus Titans in Oakland. Titans 3-point favorites here, so it's projected to be a close game, and we want games with high totals and tight spreads. It's just really, really hard for me to get excited because a lot of that's due to pace. The Raiders are 19th in situation-neutral pace, according to Football Outsiders, and the Titans are 27th. That's mostly because both these teams are super run-heavy in neutral situations. If we look at the full season, Oakland has the 30th highest pass rate on early downs in the first half. They're ahead of only Washington and Baltimore there. If we look at the Titans since Ryan Tannehill took over, the Titans have a 50% pass rate in that time. That is actually lower than it was under Marcus Mariota and would rank 26th if it were their full season mark. They've been more run heavy in the first half than they were when Mariota was quarterback. They're facing the league's 21st ranked rush defense. They should be able to keep that up this week. Oakland's matchup is tougher. Tennessee is 4th against the rush, which could inspire them to throw a bit more. And they're facing another pass funnel in the Jets in Week 12, and they did throw more often. They threw 63% of the time on early downs in the first half, but they sucked. So it's hard to really see that as a positive. I think that Derrick Henry and Darren Waller are options here, and I don't mind either. But it's really hard for me to get jazzed about either of the quarterbacks. I don't like the thinner options. I think A.J. Brown's in play, but I don't really like him that much. Tyrell Williams is in play. Don't like him that much. Jonnu Smith is an option. They all give me a lot of pause. So I think I'm going to be lower on this game than the market. How do you view this game specifically as a whole?
I don't much care for it.
Okay.
I mean, it's now tied for, I think, the third highest total at 46.5. The money's pretty much right, 50-50, over and under. You mentioned the pace concerns. I have them 22nd and 31st in pace. In terms of just, if you look at their full season splits in terms of pre-snap win probability, I have them both bottom 5 in pass rate over expectation. So we know that these teams want to slow it down. It's exactly what you were saying. I don't understand why the total is 46.5. It's not like egregious. It's not like it's 50.5 or anything like that. But as for the play, like you can play Derrick Henry. They're actually favored. He's $9,100. He has to hit the nuts on the rushing work for him.
But he can. Like
he
that
can.
Right.
He can.
Well, I think that what you're saying is why I don't want to go there in cash games, but I'll still go there in tournaments.
For Henry or this whole game?
For Henry.
I mean, it's Henry and Waller in this game who really stand out from a projectability stand. I mean, I still think Darren Waller is like a core play for me at the price at $6,200. I think that's fair. Henry is, I think, a secondary play if you find value and you can get to him in a cash game. I think the floor is higher than I want to believe it is because they're not going to escape this game giving Derrick Henry like 5 touches. It's not really going to happen. They're going to feed him the ball, so there's like some floor.
Yeah.
But there's just no receiving work, and if Oakland does get out ahead, like it's problematic. So I guess maybe I'm higher on the quarterbacks than you are, but not a ton.
Quarterbacks is plural. You realize that, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to use Derek Carr?
I think he's a decent cash game play.
I would rather get punched in the face than use Derek Carr.
I know.
Quarterback in DFS. I like him less than Ryan Tannehill, and you know my feelings on Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Ryan Tannehill's 9th in tags, by the way, on Chair.
Yeah. I mean, so Carr has not had a 300-yard game yet. He's maxed out at since week 4. He hasn't had more than 32 attempts. Tannehill.
His ADOT is barely beyond the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Like his ADOT is my height, basically.
Yeah. Tannehill's got 59 attempts over the past 3 games. He's been like good, which is
he's been fine. His efficiency was lower last week because he loves sacks, and people keep talking about his yards per attempt, but like that's not the full equation with Ryan Tannehill. I'm not mad. I'm just really okay. So the past 3 games,
I love how. Go ahead.
His attempts the past 3 games are 19, 18, and 22. He's getting off because he gets rushing touchdowns, and like, are you gonna bank on him getting rushing touchdowns? Not really. So I think he's terrible. I don't think he's a terrible player. He's shown that. I think he's a terrible fantasy asset. He'll get some rushing yardage, which is cool. I like that. But like, I don't want to use him. I'll use Derrick Henry. I like Derrick Henry more than Ryan Tannehill, and you know that I don't use Derrick Henry.
Would you use Marcus Mariota in this game?
Yeah. Like if Ryan Tannehill,
that's all I needed to know.
If Ryan Tannehill decided he wanted to spend more time with his family today and is like, I'm good, guys, and Marcus Mariota starts, I'd use Marcus Mariota's terrible. I know it. Stop it. I know. I get it.
Hey,
I'm
man,
wrong.
You said Kalen Ballage is my boy, so I gotta.
No, Marcus Mariota is objectively my boy. That's fair. I can't dispute that one. I can't get over the mental block of using Ryan Tannehill at 73 in a slow game.
I don't blame you.
Okay, cool. I feel better then. I don't feel good because I've been so wrong on Marcus Mariota, and like I have to accept that, but like I don't have to like it. I have to accept it, but I don't have to like it. There's a big difference there. We are already 14 weeks into the 2019 NFL season, which means time is running out to enter FanDuel's biggest NFL contest, the NFL Sunday Million. Every week, the contest pays out over $1 million in prize money, and this week is no different. All you got to do is to enter this contest is build your lineup and take your shot at the $1.65 million total prize pool, including $300,000 at first place, all for just $9. With just 4 more weeks of the regular season left, you can bet that contest will fill up fast, so make sure you get in while you still can. What are you waiting for? Head to FanDuel and enter now. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's move to Bookmaker Info now, starting off with the Saints versus 49ers. I kind of dig this game. The total opened with the Saints, or the spread opened with the Saints favored by 3. It has tightened to -2.5. Total here is 44.5, but 85% of the money is on the over, and you can get it at 45.5 in some books, according to OddsFire. So we know the defenses are good, but how are you looking to go at this game, if at all?
Yeah, I'll go at it. Like at first glance, it's like it's two good teams, 2 good defenses. Like, don't love it, but if you dig in, I mean, for the Saints, we know where the ball's going. It's going to be to Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. That's about it that you can trust. For the 49ers, it's George Kittle, who At $6,700, I could definitely see the case for putting him above Travis Kelce as like that tight end. But I feel like maybe you and JJ have talked about Emmanuel Sanders a bit. I'm not seeing it. You haven't?
I said I like this game. I didn't say specifically I like Manny.
Okay. Well, then
I was alluding
what
to
are
the
you
fact
seeing?
that I like Kittle.
Just Kittle?
Yeah. I could use Manny, but I think he'll see more Marshawn Lattimore than anyone else.
Right.
Although, like, if I were the Saints, I might consider putting Lattimore on Kittle, but I don't know. He lines up in line enough where that's kind of hard, I guess, schematically. But I think that Manny is okay. I think that Debo's okay, but the standout to me really is George Kittle. On the Saints, I really like Alvin Kamara. And I was talking about how I'm having a hard time deciding who like my other cash game running backs will be. He is someone I'm weighing there. I am not committed to him, but I'm weighing him in that discussion. If you look at him, since he came back from that injury, like he hasn't gotten a lot of rushing work, but he has 10, 10, 9, and 8 targets. And he has not scored a touchdown since week 5. That is why he is $7,600. He has still had double-digit FanDuel points in every game, despite scoring literally 0 touchdowns since, I guess, week 3, actually, since his last touchdown. They're probably going to have Terran Armstead, at least I would assume that, based on the fact that he practiced on Wednesday. That's a major upgrade. I think that Alvin Kamara is like a top 5 running back play on this slate, personally. Especially if Armstead plays, I think he's definitely a top 5 play. I think he's more fringy if he doesn't go.
Yeah, so I think this game's easy, though, because the only players you can really feel confident in is George Kittle, Kamara, Michael Thomas, and I guess Jared Cook. His role's been good, but his price, I think he's $6,500. Yeah, that's tough with Kittle being 67. But outside of that, these teams can get the ball to anyone. Jeffrey Wilson can score touchdowns. Taysom Hill can score touchdowns, and I think that's like my biggest concern is you just never know who's actually going to walk it into the end zone, and I don't like that. I really weigh that in when building game stacks.
Austin Carr's on injured reserve, and he may score a touchdown for the Saints on Sunday.
That's very true.
That's how things go. I think that's possible. As far as the quarterbacks here, I don't want Drew Brees. Jimmy Garoppolo has really impressed me recently. I know he's had some bad throws, but we've talked about this a couple of times in the recap podcasts. He's had tough matchups and tough situations with injuries, but he's kind of come through. He is 78. I think that I will probably have a non-zero number of Jimmy Garoppolo lineups. Like, he hasn't been a good fantasy asset outside of the 2 Arizona games. But I think he has been better than perception. And I think that there is a situation in which he does really well here. So no Brees for me, limited Garoppolo, but I actually want to make sure I get some. What about the quarterbacks for you?
I'd put Brees over Garoppolo just because he's at home. But again, I hate playing Drew Brees because Taysom Hill might come in the red zone. And then you get Drew Brees staring off into the abyss on the sideline. Like, that's what I do
pretending to be
too.
Excited on the sidelines. He's probably genuinely excited, but I'd be very mad if Taysom Hill took my touchdowns. I shouldn't like Garoppolo because I've been trashing Brees because his ADOT and Garoppolo's is low too. But like, I think he's interesting.
I think they're both interesting in the right if the assumptions work out, but you can also assume that this game is kind of just defensive and kind of run heavy.
That's true. I think that's very fair. Let's move on here to the Vikings. They are tied to the Packers, who are tied as the heaviest favorites in the slate with the Vikings. They're favored by 13 at home against Washington. The Packers are. Win may be a bit of an issue here, but both the total and the spread have come down since the open, potentially related to the wind. So which Packers pique your interest in this spot against Washington?
4 of them, really. Devonta Adams might be my favorite expensive receiver. I know that there are pace concerns, but they're definitely not matchup concerns. So I still think that there's a fairly high floor unless they really blow the doors off of Washington in the first quarter. And even if they do, Devonta Adams, because he's got 34% of the targets since returning, is going to be most likely involved in that. I do kind of like Jamal Williams at $5,600. He's second in target share since Adams came back at 15%. He actually has more opportunities than Jones over the past 3 games. Is that right?
Yeah, he has more adjusted opportunities. I think he's at 21 and Jones is at 19.5.
Yeah, I mean,
off the top of my head.
Yeah, I have at 47, 44 just in straight opportunities over the past 3 games. He's $5,600. I think you could do way worse.
Yeah.
Punting with a running back. I guess as you can conclude, Aaron Jones, he's okay. He's got concerns. I think Aaron Rodgers has a high floor, but I don't think I would really get there.
The reason I'm lower on Devonta is because I think the two positions at which I value game environment most are quarterback and wide receiver, and his is terrible. I don't like Washington torpedoes everything around them. They finally got a bad game for Christian McCaffrey, partly because Kyle Allen's terrible and Aaron Rodgers is not. But like, it still worries me. I think that so the way that I view Aaron Jones is that there are a very narrow set of circumstances in which I would use a guy with his usage, but he fits that very narrow set of circumstances this week. He had 6 targets last week. They said that they wanted to get him more involved, and they did as a receiver. So 11 carries and 6 targets. That is despite spending some time in the injury tent. I think that he is an option. I can't go more than like 20% in tournaments because I know that the floor is crazy low and like there's a path to a very bad game here. But I do want to make sure I have some because like he happens to fit the very narrow set of circumstances in which I would use him right now as a big home favorite.
I understand the concerns about Washington's pace, but their offense is so bad that I don't think it matters quite as much because according to my spreadsheets, the past 3 opponents against them have run 68, 71, and 72 plays.
That's true. That's fair. I think that's a great counter to that. So I think that's very fair.
Their pace is bad, but they can't stay on the field because they're terrible.
Right. That's true. Also, because they're a terrible running football team, but they insist on running. Outside of Darius Geis is legit good. But I still, it's pretty much just Jones for me here as far as guys who really stand out. Outside of Chiefs Patriots, the second fastest game on the slate is between the Falcons and the Panthers. Those two teams are 9th and 7th, respectively, in situation neutral pace, according to Football Outsiders. The total here has come down. It opened at 48.5. It's down to 47. But it was 47 Monday and has held pretty steady since then. This is a repeat divisional matchup. That matters in a negative sense, but it's also in a dome. Are you cool stacking this game? And if so, how are you looking to do so?
It's also a recent repeat back in week 11, but it's 29-3 win for the Falcons. That was the second week of their new defensive play calling. They have not been very good since then.
Yeah.
So there's more data. There's a new head coach situation for the Panthers. So I don't think it's like just a straight up rematch, especially like you said, it's in a dome. In this game, I like it. I love playing the Panthers. It's never great necessarily, but I like playing them. I love Matt Ryan in this game. I love DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Devonta Freeman, and Greg Olsen. I mean, I love all those guys. I love McCaffrey too, but he's pricey.
Yeah. So with McCaffrey, the reason that I've been okay using him despite his really high salary is because I have no workload concerns. I have some, given that they seem like they don't care about 2019 anymore. And David Tepper could say, hey, shut this dude down. Like, not shut him down, but give a couple other carries to other guys. In 11,000, you have no wiggle room for lost usage. So I'm going to use him because I have to. Like, if he were to get his full usage, he'd be great. But I don't think it's 100% guarantee that he does. So I'm going to lower him. I think that the other guys, though, are like less susceptible to those concerns. Like DJ Moore is 72. That's totally fine. Or 71. I like that. Curtis Samuel, I have not used much often, but he's 58. And if Greg Olsen can't go because of a concussion, that opens up additional targets for Samuel. And like his concern has been floor. He hasn't had a good ceiling because he hasn't gotten yardage. But like if you give him a couple extra bunny targets that Kyle Allen can actually hit for once, he can maybe come through. So 58, I think he makes sense. Ian Thomas, though, if Greg Olsen can't go at $4,000, is amazing. So I really like Greg. Rest up, bud. Like, rest up. Let's go, man. Yeah. Just hang out for a bit. Let's let Ian Thomas eat here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Love Ian Thomas if there's no Olsen. I play a lot of Curtis Samuel. I might play more Curtis Samuel than anybody else. But how are you viewing Julio and Austin Hooper, assuming that they play?
So Julio is $7,800. I think he'd be fine. I don't know if it's
I think the ceiling is super high. I think the floor is super low because he could just be out of the game by the first quarter.
Right. And like they're already eliminated from playoff contentions. Like there's really no reason for them to push. Austin Hooper, I don't mind him, and I think if you have him in season long, you can play him, but like he's right by Kittle, he's right by Kelsey. He is above like other guys who I like more, so I probably won't get there in DFS, but for season long, use him. Calvin Ridley, I think, is like kind of interesting again. He's 69. I think that's overpriced now that you put guys like Julio and Hooper back in, but he has a path to a big game still, so I don't mind him.
Yeah, I like Matt Ryan.
I probably should, but like I've used him a lot recently and it hasn't gone well. I think it's better now that we have the guys healthy again. What about Devonta Freeman at 6,000?
I have him as a love in my player picks.
Yeah.
Kind of out of obligation because he's cheap, but I mean, he's going to play 2/3 of the snaps, get about 17 to 20 opportunities. Carolina is 30th in rushing success rate allowed to backs. So, I mean, it's stupid to write him off.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to use him. I definitely use him. And I haven't used him hardly at all this year, but I will use him here. They're literally the worst rush defense in football. And he's at home. They're favored. Kyle Allen stinks. Could send up a short fields. Chris Lindstrom was designated to return from IR. I don't think he'll play this week because he didn't practice before this week, but like there's a possibility he could, so keep an eye on that. Be a big upgrade for the rushing efficiency for Devonta Freeman. But like last week came back into his same role, 17 carries and 5 targets. And like for $6,000, sure, I'll take that. He's kind of like Le'Veon, where like he's not going to be efficient, but like there's still a path to a good game. So like I don't hate it. I'm going to use him.
Yeah, I mean, really, what's the difference between Le'Veon and Devonta Freeman, all things considered, for that huge price discrepancy?
I don't know.
I mean, Freeman gets like receiving work, so it's
Devonta Freeman or Kenyon Drake.
I'd feel safer with Freeman.
I would too. I like both, but I would go Devonta Freeman there. Whether you're playing DFS or betting on sports, OddsFire is a key tool for your research. Shop for the best lines in each market and see which side is getting the most bets and money. OddsFire is the premier odds comparison experience across major bookmakers in the regulated U.S. market. Never settle, always get the best odds. Check out the experience for free now on Numberfire or at oddsfire.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Weather for this week, wind speeds are a bit higher now than I'd like for Browns and Bengals in Cleveland. They're currently projected at 16 miles per hour again. May not matter as much there based on stadium construction, but if it stays there, maybe a slight downgrade of the offenses. Pretty similar story in Green Bay for the Packers and Washington. Wind speeds are 15 miles per hour there, so keep an eye on that one. And shockingly, the weather might be funky in Buffalo in December. Who could have thought that? Wind speeds are projected at 14 miles per hour there as they host the Ravens. We've not talked about that game yet, Brandon, but how heavy will you be on Lamar Jackson? And does anybody else here interest you?
I'll be about as heavy as I normally am, like 20 to 25% across all lineups, because he's really hard to stack. I know that the ceiling is super high with his rushing, but any passing concern, I mean, the volume could really bottom out here, and that's problematic for him to pay off at 9,000 in terms of his. I mean, the floor is high, but he's really got to kind of smash to be a great tournament play. So probably treating him as usual. I'm not even factoring in the weather because I don't really care about his passing.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, honestly, like what the weather is or what the matchup is. So I think that it's totally fine. Like I'm going to use the same as I do. Like you said, same as usual. I don't really want anybody else in this game though. Like the Ravens defense is awesome. I still don't think the Bills offense is as good as they've looked because they faced a lot of really bad opponents and they're not facing a bad opponent and there's bad weather. So probably just Lamar Jackson in this game for me. Let's move on to our position-by-position plays for week number 14. Starting off at quarterback, Brandon, who do you have there for the main slate?
Someone I don't think we've even talked about yet, Shawn Watson at $7,700.
He's good, man.
It's going to happen this week. It's 13 games. You're going to kind of forget about some guys, not have them in your player pool, but they just looked amazing against the Patriots. The Broncos are, decent. They're 14th against the pass, according to Numberfire, but the Texans are 6th in adjusted passing offense based on Numberfire's metrics. Deshaun Watson's been good all year. He does have dud games in his profile, but he also has amazing games, and he rates out as the best quarterback play in my model early on this week. And I also love Matt Ryan at $7,600. It's a tough, like, on paper matchup against the Panthers, but they just fired their head coach. They could be fired up, but I think for the most part, people like Ron Rivera. I don't really dig into that stuff, but they just played in Week 11, but this is indoors. Matt Ryan has been very good against top 12 pass defenses this year in his 4 games, averaging 277 yards, which is 44 more yards than the average in that split. Getting Julio Jones and Austin Hooper back should go a long way for Matt Ryan at $7,600.
Yeah, he's been bad recently, but he also didn't have Julio last week. He didn't have Hooper before then. So I think that he's a better option than he has been. I didn't use him at all on Thanksgiving, despite it being just a 3-game slate. So I'm higher on him now than I was, and I guess that's probably the way I'd put that. My first 11 quarterback is Sam Darnold because he is at home against the league's worst pass defense. But people have been ignoring him early in the week because he's volatile, but, like, who cares? Like, he has a ceiling still. He's topped 26 FanDuel points in 2 of the past 3 games. One of those was at home against a bad opponent. He doesn't have a good floor, but, like, his ceiling is awesome at 77. So I like Sam Darnold a lot. My second love is Baker Mayfield because I am watching the wind here, but I do like Baker quite a bit. He's facing the 29th ranked pass defense. He played through a thumb injury last week, and he had, if you watch the second half of that game, he still had zip on his passes. So I don't think the injury is a big concern. The Bengals, I think, personally, should be able to score points with their health trending up. So I think Baker is really fun at 76. I have no read on who I want to use in cash games yet. It'll probably be based on salary elsewhere, but, like, I think that the 4 guys here are all in consideration. Maybe not Deshaun because, like, that game is pretty unappealing, but, like, I think that Baker, Ryan, and Darnold are at least considerations, I would say.
Yeah, it's going to be one of these weeks where nobody's probably going to stand out 100% at any position. Mm-hmm. So just kind of got to take some good with some bad, I guess.
So let's move now to running back. Who do you have there?
Speaking of taking some bad with the good with the bad, it's Dalvin Cook at $8,700. I mean, he's going to play, or at least he said that he's going to play. He seems very intent, so that robs us of Alexander Madison week. But, loading up on Cook in cash games is something I might do, but for tournaments, I love him. Minnesota is 83% likely to win, according to Numberfire. The Lions are 27th in rushing success rate allowed to backs. They're, Minnesota's 13-point favorites here. It's a great matchup, but there is a path to Dalvin Cook being, on the sideline in the second half. So keep that in mind, but I still think that the upside here for Dalvin Cook is immense. So I think that he makes a lot of sense for tournaments. My second love is going to be Melvin Gordon at $7,300. I'll be considering Le'Veon Bell, playing Le'Veon Bell, but I think Melvin Gordon makes sense here. Since their coordinator changed a few weeks back, he's been the favorite in the backfield. 76 carries and 13 targets for him. By comparison, Austin Eckler, 32 carries and 23 targets. Jacksonville's not a good rush defense necessarily, so I think that there's like a high floor for Melvin Gordon in this game. My third love will save some salary and be Devonta Freeman at $6,000. I don't have super high hopes for the ceiling, but he's been playing pretty much his early season role. 22 opportunities last week on 2/3 of the snaps. He's pretty much what he gets every game. Carolina's 30th in rushing success rate allowed to backs, dead last in adjusted efficiency on the ground overall. So I think he could do way worse than Devonta Freeman at $6,000, and I would consider him in cash games maybe.
I don't think it's a terrible idea. I would like to avoid it, but I don't think it's the worst idea. I guess that's the way I'd phrase that. Yep. My first level running back is Alvin Kamara because, I want to keep an eye on Terran Armstead here, but he did get in a limited practice on Wednesday. So my assumption is that Armstead plays, and that's big for Kamara. If we look at Kamara since he came back from that ankle injury, he is averaging 9.8 carries and 9.3 targets per game. It may sound low, but once you double the targets to get adjusted opportunities to adjust for the gap in efficiency between a carry and a target for a running back, that's 28.3 adjusted opportunities per game. And getting that for a guy who is $7,600 is pretty desirable. So he is due for some positive touchdown regression soon, and it could come here. So despite the matchup, I think that Kamara is just way too cheap. I also like Leonard Fournette. I think that he is kind of a no-brainer top running back for me, salary considered, because he's getting massive work. He had 17% of the team's targets from weeks 2 through 7. That's before Dede Westbrook got hurt, before Minshew got benched. So we get that. He's also due for big-time touchdown regression. He's the only guy getting volume that comes anywhere near Christian McCaffrey's, and you get him at $7,500. against the league's 22nd ranked rush defense at home. They should be better against the rush now that Phillips and James are back, but I still like Fournette a lot. My third love is Kenyon Drake. I would mention that I do like Devonta Freeman more, around 6,000, but Drake is also consideration here. He has a wretched matchup, but the workload has been awesome, and it did stay the same out of their bye week. In the 3 games with David Johnson being active, Drake has averaged 13 carries and 6.3 targets per game. That is 25.7 adjusted opportunities per game. He played 80% of the snaps last week. I can't go here in cash because that workload could very easily change, and the matchup is tough, but I do still like him for tournaments in case he keeps that role. So tournament-only play, but I do like Drake there. Let's move to wide receiver. Who stands out to you there, Brandon?
I still love Devonta Adams at the top, but I'm going to go with Julian Edelman as my number 1. It's at just $7,600. He's the only reliable piece in the Patriots offense. It's not overall a great matchup environment. There are paths to this game not being great for fantasy, but his target floor is so high. And really, outside of Mike Evans, I'm nervous about every receiver above him. So Edelman is my number 1 here. My second love is Tyler Boyd at $6,300. We both like this game more than I think a lot of people do. He's 6th in my model in like floor ceiling combination. He led the team with 10 targets last week, had 5 of the 6 deep targets with Andy Dalton back. John Ross, not going to affect Tyler Boyd's usage a ton, but it's going to open up, it's going to lift the lid a little bit and increase the offense's efficiency overall. My third love is Cristian Kirk at $5,900. He got erased by Jalen Ramsey last week. It's not a great matchup. I'm a little bit nervous about this one, but 38% of the downfield targets with Drake in town, 24% of the overall targets. If I'm really nervous about it, maybe D.D. Westbrook down here. I also like Philip Dorsett, and you'll talk about Jacoby Meyers, I think. So not a great week to spend down at wide receiver, I don't think.
I forgot that I was talking about Jacoby Meyers, but I am. So keep him in there. My first love, though, is Mike Evans. Kind of seems like this could be a week where Mike Evans gets lost in the shuffle with a lot of high-dollar receivers who have something to offer. And that probably shouldn't happen. Since the Bucs bye week, Evans has 26% of the overall targets, 40% of the deep targets, and 24% of the red zone targets. That's been the time where Evans and Godwin have gotten less work. But even in that time, Evans' workload has been outstanding. He is $7,700. He is surrounded by other interesting names. I want to make sure he does not slip through the cracks. I think that he is a good play. I also like in that same game, Zach Pascal. I don't like to trust the Colts offense with no T.Y. Hilton because they tend to get bad, but Pascal and Jack Doyle are the exceptions here. Pascal's cheaper at 61, and in the 4 games that Hilton has missed since Pascal had his expanded role, Pascal has 23% of the team's targets and 43% of the deep targets. The Bucs are still a secondary we can't exploit, especially with a guy who has been solid and should see a lot of volume. So Pascal at 61 is a fine play for me. My third love is Jacoby Meyers because I think that it's not a lock that his role sticks, but he played heavy volume and heavy snaps last week against the Texans, even with Mohamed Sanu being active. Meyers had 7 targets. He had 1 deep and 2 in the red zone there. He's $5,100 and gets you exposure to the fastest game on the slate. So I do think that Meyers is someone I will probably wind up using. I think that Curtis Samuel is another guy at 58 who I really don't mind. Tyrell is okay at 57. He's fine. So there are options down here, but I do think that, and I guess I should mention A.J. Brown. He played 90% of the snaps last week. I have a rule where I don't use pieces of the Titans passing offense, but if you don't have that rule, A.J. Brown is okay.
Yeah.
He's fine.
I can see that.
What do you have at tight end?
I'm going to go with Darren Waller. I think I'm probably going to try to spend up a little bit at wide receiver. So if I can spend down, take any savings at tight end, that helps. Darren Waller's not cheap, but he is $6,200. So he's a discount from their super pricey tight ends. Without Hunter Renfrow last week, 9 targets for Darren Waller. So a third of the targets, 51% of the air yards. Tennessee's 21st against tight ends. So it's not a matchup to really worry about. And I think it's a good price for kind of a built-in floor for Darren Waller. My second love is Noah Fant at $4,800. I did display some concerns about him on Monday, but I mean, his price is down. He had 5 yards last week, but had a deep target and a red zone target, played 72% of the snaps. I think he's a volume-based bounce-back option. Houston's tough against tight ends, but I think you could do way worse than an athletic tight end with a path to volume like Noah Fant at $4,800.
Athletic tight end with the best quarterback in football. So let's go. Noah Fant, I think, is okay. Fit 48. Didn't mention Cortland Sutton at 73, but I will have some Sutton this week. Texans defense totally beatable, and I think that's fine. I think that there are a lot of guys in that range, so I'm not going to like
Texans Broncos stacks. Not something we talked about, but something that we'll probably have.
Drew Lock, baby. Drew Lock. Let's go. Over to Shawn Watson. What could go wrong? My first love at tight end is George Kittle. He's played 4 games alongside Emmanuel Sanders, and in those 4 games, Kittle still has 25% of the targets and 38% of the deep targets. That's 1.25 deep targets per game because Garoppolo's been pretty conservative there, but they're getting healthier, and I think they've outperformed expectations on offense several times recently. You can get Kittle for $6,700 in what should be a pretty fun, pretty tight game. So I like Kittle, but I love Ian Thomas down at 4,000 if Greg Olsen sits. Thomas came on late last week after Olsen left, and he still got 4 targets there, and one of those targets was deep. Thomas last year played a lot of games where Olsen didn't play, and he had 16% of the team's targets in those. And the pass catching personnel is pretty similar now to what it was then. So Ian Thomas at 4,000, I think, would be my cash game tight end if Olsen can't go. And I'd have a lot of him in tournaments too. Let's finish up here at defense, Brandon. Who you got there?
The Jets at $4,100, 5.5 point home favorites. Miami does not have much outside of Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki to cause a lot of problems. Miami 30th in adjusted pressure rate on offense. Both teams actually top 12 in pace and my pace metrics. So I think that there are chances for mistakes here, and that's pretty nice at $4,100.
Yeah, it is a Fitzpatrick revenge game. Keep that in mind. Nothing has ever gone. I mean, like every game for him is a revenge game. So, what about if Jamal Adams sits? Would you still go the Jets then?
Yeah.
And let's say Jamal Adams plays. Would you use Devontae Parker and the Jets defense in the same lineup? Because I think I would. I'd be fine with that personally.
I don't think I have to.
I'd be fine with it though.
Sure. I don't really care that much about points.
That's what my thought process is. I don't care like how many points. I just want the pick 6.
Yeah.
And there's decent odds Ryan Fitzpatrick throws a pick 6. I am lower on the Jets because I love Jamal Adams, but I don't think it's a terrible idea. My love is the Falcons, which is just as bad. They're 3-point home favorites against a turnover-prone quarterback, so similar profile to the Jets. These are 2 teams that just saw each other 2 weeks ago, which should boost the Falcons. They are $3,500. They're not a good defense, but they're cheap and they fit the process, so kind of like the Jets, who cares? But I think that they're healthier at least. I would use Ian Thomas and the Falcons in the same lineup too. That doesn't bother me at all. So it's a week where I'm going to be more okay using guys against my defense, which is fine. I'm not too worried about that. I'll do it when I need to, and I think that I probably will need to this week for both the Jets and the Falcons. Any closing thoughts for you, Brandon, as we get set for week number 14?
It's 13 games. Don't play guys that you get talked into necessarily. Play guys that you feel confident in and find the right research to back it up, because anything can happen on a 13-game slate. So, trust yourself a bit and take a stand, I guess.
We can't account for all situations. So keep that in mind. If there's a guy you can cross off, do it. Absolutely. Like we were talking about Stephon Diggs earlier. He's an awesome player. He's at home. Big implied team total. But if you have concerns, don't go there. I probably won't. That's the way I do.
Or if everyone's saying don't play Stephon Diggs and you're like, well, I'm going to play Stephon Diggs because I see a lot of good in his profile, then
if you see something different than we do, go for it. That's the kind of slate it is. Absolutely. Yep. I think that, trust your gut, trust your process. I'll trust mine, and I'll go a lot of Leonard Fournette, and we'll see what happens on those 16 empty goal line carries. That is all that we have for this week. I want to thank you all for tuning in both on YouTube and on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Brandon, if people have questions for you, where can they find you on Twitter?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Do not forget to subscribe to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it may be. You can find us. Subscribe, rate, and review there. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer for today, as always, for keeping us on the air on the video side of things. Thank you, Cal. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Good luck with your Week 14 lineups, and we'll talk talk to you again on Monday to recap how it all went down. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Number Fire.